Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, Stuart, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you, sir, for taking a minute out today.
You bet. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
so much.
So
And go eat some barbecue for me because I love that place.
yeah, I will load up. Absolutely. You don't have to ask me twice. So
Mm.
let's get into your world a little bit. To begin, I want to know 5 years ago, this pandemic changed our lives. How did you make it through the pandemic, and how has it ultimately affected your business model and the way you live life today?
Well, if you knew then what you know now, you wouldn't have done what you did. I started building a factory. Keep in mind, the foam waste that we use, the trash that we gather, the foam scraps from footwear are in Asia because that's where all shoes are made, right?
Yeah.
And so I started building a factory to fabricate recycled products out of the waste foam from the footwear industry 2 months before the pandemic hit.
Wow.
And so now I am plodding along and I've got 2 months. I've leased a building, I'm building equipment, and suddenly the pandemic comes along and I am unable to go and oversee the construction and the building of my factory for the next 3 years. And in hindsight, I probably should have just stopped because it was costly, it took too long, it was inefficient. But you just didn't know how long it was going to last. You didn't know what was going to happen next. But in hindsight, I wish I had just put it on pause. But as an entrepreneur, you're if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. And the mission was so, I guess, alluring or important to me that I just couldn't stop. And I just didn't know what was next.
Yeah.
But it was very challenging in some ways. Without great support of some of my friends and investors, we wouldn't have made it through.
So let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day. The kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
Um, we take scrap foam. This is the foam that people throw away when they're making shoes. Defective midsoles. You can see that's a midsole, or can you see the cutout of the shoe in there?
Yeah.
We take this, and there's enough of this foam thrown away every single year to make 2.5 billion midsoles. So this is the foam cushioning system of your shoe, or an insole that goes inside your shoe.
Wow.
And so we make foam components like this out of that scrap foam.
Wow.
So we're taking the trash from the footwear industry and making high performance, beautiful, long lasting new products from what has traditionally been trash.
Wow. What did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream?
Well, I grew up on a cattle ranch in Nebraska, and I didn't know there was anything other than cattle ranching. So I think that I always wanted to be a cattle rancher, and I'm probably not smart enough to run a ranch. But I then got into running. I went to a boarding school in St. Louis, Missouri called Principia, and I found this great mentor and a coach, and I started running. And once I started running, it became clear to me that footwear, I could improve my own footwear. Why I thought this as a 14-year-old kid, but I would win a race out at the Easter race or the Thanksgiving race, my age division. They'd give me a pair of shoes, but you didn't trade them in for your favorite brand. You wore whatever they were giving you.
Yeah.
And believe me, they probably weren't giving you the stuff that was selling out of their store.
Yeah.
And if it was too stiff, I'd go get a butcher knife from mom and slice the sole and make it more flexible. If the Achilles tab was too high, I'd just take scissors and chop it off. If they were too hot, I'd just punch holes in them. And so I just had this belief that because I was experiencing so much, I was so experienced with footwear by running uh, literally hundreds of miles a week, that I could make it better. And so footwear became a passion because running was my my passion. And one thing led to another, and I got into the footwear business, and I've really been in the footwear business, innovating in the footwear business since I was 18 years old, a
Wow.
senior in high school.
What were the foundational elements of growing up in Nebraska on a farm that gave you this entrepreneurial spirit, this vision that you can do this, you can be bigger than anything around you, and you can take control?
Well, that's a good question. Although my father would tell you that farm is a four-letter word that starts with F, and we don't use that in polite company. We were ranchers. He was very particular about being a cattle rancher. But I think the values, of course, were that, you know, whatever else you did in life, my father believed that hard work would win out. His number one priority was hard work. Did you work hard? And we learned how to work hard. We only worked when the cattle ate, and that's 365 days a year or days that end in Y. If the cattle are hungry, you feed them. Christmas, New Year's, it doesn't matter. I think the other thing is that I never saw my mother or father get a check from anyone else. The only way we got a check was when we went and sold hay or cattle or something we had raised and nurtured and tended. And so I didn't really have a concept growing up that people paid you to go to work. I remember going to boarding school. I was in eighth grade in boarding school, and I went to my first Saturday afternoon high school football game, and my friends start introducing me to their fathers. And I said, "Well, your dad's here at the game on Saturday. Doesn't he work?" And oh no, he's a banker. He works for a chemical company. So first time in my life, I was in eighth grade. I realized people didn't work on Saturday, and so that value system of creating something, nurturing something, caring for it, and earning a living by producing something was just that's all I knew.
So, who's been that hero that's allowed you to become successful, to evolve in your career?
Hero, you know, I think it would be unfair to put that on one person, but I am a huge believer in mentorship and mentors. And I would say, first of all, my father and mother allowed my brother and I to start borrowing money from the bank and buying cattle when I was 9 years old, and my brother was 11. We built that into a 100 head herd of cattle. Most parents weren't doing that. So mom and dad created an environment where they said, "Hey, if you want money, go produce it." I would say my track coaches at Principia, Jack Irely and Bill Simon, who said, "Here's this kid from Central Nebraska. He'll work hard. He may not have a lot of talent, but that work ethic is going to get you a long way." And then uh, when I was looking for an opportunity, this gentleman named George Cole from Pebble Beach, California, hired me to work on what it's right over my head, an air shoe. He had invented one-handled water faucets. I was looking for a sponsor to run across the United States and be the youngest person to run across the United States. And he said, "Well, my shoe won't make it across the street, let alone across the country. Maybe you can help me build my shoe." And so I'm 18, 19 years old, and I'm helping him pioneer this idea to put air in shoes. This is before Nike came out with their airbag, which they
Yeah.
did a year later. And we ended up licensing that to Reebok 8 years later, and 94 failed sales calls in a row. But it's the fact that these mentors, why did George Cole, this inventor, he invented one-handled water faucets
Yeah.
instead of two, one,
Yeah.
lived in a place I'd never heard of called Pebble Beach, California. You talk about a place that is as remote as possible from Broken Bow, Nebraska. And why did he select me as an 18-year-old kid and say, "Hey, come help me make this shoe"? I
Yeah.
mean, uh, it feels like there was a lot of luck involved, but as I used to say to George Cole, I'd say, and there were others. This guy named Bud Godfrey helped me the same way, but I used to say to George Cole, "Well, how do I pay you back?" Because he would buy every meal. My mom and dad taught me, you pay your way once in a while. He'd say, well, Stuart, you can't pay me back. You have to pay it forward.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, Joe, I get up almost every day and I think about that. And I can assure you that if a young person in high school or college sends me an email, it will probably be the first email I answer every day.
Wow. In the realm of entrepreneurship, who's one of your favorites? Is there one that you've looked up to that you've emulated?
You know, I'm a huge fan of history, so I read biographies all the time. And I think it's really dangerous to try to emulate anyone. You know, people say invest like Warren Buffett. Well, Warren Buffett is a genius, right? You will never have the talent or skill or mindset of Warren Buffett. Now you can follow his principles and practice and think things through. So I think part of being an entrepreneur is being inspired by those who have come before you, but not trying to emulate them. I think the art of entrepreneurship is being who you are with your passion and your ideas. I also think that some of the entrepreneurs that we respect because they made so much money and they're so successful, you know, they haven't exactly lived a life the way I would want to live my life. I mean, Elon Musk is a genius, but the way he treats people is not the way I would want to be treated. I wouldn't want my son or daughter working for him.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs is a genius, but I wouldn't want my son or daughter working for him. J. Paul Getty, I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't want them to work for him. And I think that this is the thing that some of the entrepreneurs that we celebrate today, it seems like um, with their great strengths come these irredeemable flaws, character flaws, just a cruelness. I mean, they are so intelligent and so smart, they just can't almost seem to understand a normal human being and a normal life. And so I think we have to chart our own way. And, you know, you really have to ask yourself if you have to be a complete um, antisocial jerk to be that successful, is it worth it?
Yeah.
And you know, I guess I would love to be that successful, but I would love to be that successful in a more humane kind way. You know, I mean, I grew up in Nebraska. You know, I think of football a lot. You know, I would rather win with Tom Osborne. I would rather lose with Tom Osborne than win with Barry Switzer because I think that Tom Osborne, while not perfect, treated people well and had perspective about winning and losing. You know, it's if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have wins and you're going to have losses, and it's how you deal with the in between that probably matters most. Um, you know, I qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon by 4 seconds, and I've got a lot of attention for being an Olympic trials qualifier. Oh, you ran in the Olympic trials. I did, but I qualified by 4 seconds. And I have always been very clear. If I'd run 5 seconds slower, would I be any less valuable as a human being? Would I have be any less good as an athlete? Well, I would have got a lot less of attention, but really I was the same person. And every lesson that I learned in running the marathon happened while I was running it, not what time I ran it in. It
Yeah.
was the effort, it was the challenge and meeting the challenge and overcoming the challenge and learning the lessons of the hard work and discipline and the daily training where all of the value was. It wasn't in qualifying for the Olympic trials. The Olympic trial was a goal, and it's always great to meet your goal, but it's the doing, not the having done that where the value is earned.
So speaking of the doing, what is it that's gotten you up every day that's allowed you to evolve your company, your footwear, to bring in folks like Mike Yuzremski and to really have a reputation? What's been that drive for you every day?
Well, I get up every day believing that we can make the best products in the world for athletes and people while being respectful to the planet. And those two things have really not gone together. Everybody said, well, you can make world-class products or you can make quote unquote sustainable products, or they kind of put recycled over here in this crappy product section.
Yeah,
And, we're building insoles, right? For, I think we've got probably 800 to 1,000 professional athletes who are buying and wearing our product. They're not buying them because they happen to be made of recycled material. They're buying them because 90% of them can run faster when wearing it. 80% of them are more stable or safer when wearing it. And and I guess I'm enough of a contrarian to say that when everybody else thinks that this is trash, this is a problem, and I can see it becoming a solution that makes world-class products for world-class athletes, and it's better for the environment. That gets me up in the morning. And every day I have people tell me, no, that won't work. That, no, 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 we're going to keep doing it the old way. We're going to, if they were out on a farm, they'd still be plowing instead of minimal tillage. They would be doing it the old way. And so I want to build a great business while doing it the right way. And I think you can. I mean, we just launched this shoe this morning, or Allbirds did, where we made this midsole.
yeah,
Now, midsoles have always been made out of foam that creates trash and pollution.
yeah,
The fact that 85% of this would have gone to the landfill, you would have either burned it or buried it, but they've used it to make a beautiful, long-lasting midsole. This midsole will last 1,000 miles of cushioning. You
wow,
won't get that in 99.99% of all foam out there. And the fact that we've done that with recycled, I think it's great to make something that's better for the planet, better
yep,
for the athlete, better for the consumer, and
yep.
just better. And that's a bend. And I would also say for my young friends, I'm an environmental capitalist. I believe that markets are how you solve problems. And you can sit around and I don't mind anybody going out and protesting the throwing away of foam, get your placard if you wish. But I think you're going to clean this foam up not by protesting, but by finding much better things to do with it.
Yep.
Things that world-class athletes and people who want to perform like world-class athletes want to have, or shoes that are more comfortable for longer. If
Yep.
this midsole lasts 1,000 miles, you will have to buy fewer of them.
Yep.
That's better for the planet. So, use markets to win. And of course, I can't win unless the consumer, unless every baseball player in Kansas City, little leaguer and high schooler and junior college and college player want to go and say, hey, why is Mike Yastrzemski or Brendan Donovan or Bobby Witt Jr., why do they wear Blumaka? I can't afford to pay those guys to wear them. They're wearing them because they perform better when they are wearing them. And so we have to be able to get that word out to the general public.
So, in the landscape of products that athletes can get involved with footwear and insoles, I'm sure it's flooded. How did you get in there? How did you get these athletes to not only get it for the first time, but to be repeat customers?
Well, this is where you sometimes your heroes are heroes. And I knew Mike Yastrzemski's father-in-law, and I told him about this product I was creating. And he said, well, send some to Mike and let him test them. And so Mike, after the season, I sent Mike a pair. I didn't hear from Mike for several months, which about killed me. I didn't want to bother him. I didn't want to call him and make him say nice things. And right before training camp, he calls me and says, hey, Stuart, this is Mike Yastrzemski. Uh, could I get a couple more of your insoles? And I go, well, do you like the ones? Oh, we love them. I said, well, I sent you two pair. What? Oh, I gave one to the catcher for the Cubs and he won't give them back. So I send him 5 more pair, and he goes to spring training. A couple days later, hey, Stuart, can you send me 5 more? Some teammates want it. Sure. A couple days later, Stuart, can you send me 5 more? Sure. A couple days later, can you send me 5? No, Mike, I am out. You have every insole I've ever made. He said, well, you better line up the factory because people love them.
Wow.
And the fact that he started wearing them and then he would tell his teammates, and then some reporter interviewed him. And when the reporter interviewed him, the reporter really ambushed him coming off the field in Phoenix. And Mike, he says, I hear you're wearing this secret insole. Pulls the insole out, had the reporter test it, told him all about it. And from there, there's not a Major League Baseball team in America that doesn't have multiple players wearing our product. And I think we just had, there's a Dodger who's ordered 20 pair over the last 3 years. We had a catcher the other day place his seventh order. So it grew from there because they liked the product. I wish I had the marketing budget of a Nike to tell, be like Mike Yastrzemski,
Yep.
or be like Brendan Donovan. Brendan Donovan has been the same way with the Cardinals. The guy is just relentlessly positive on our product. And so those guys that get paid to sell everything have been just so generous because they know that the Blumaka non-slip technology works for them.
Wow.
And so, is that luck? Um, well, it certainly feels fortuitous, but in the end, the product had to work. I could have given away 1,000 of these to every Major League Baseball team in America, and if nobody liked the product, if it wasn't performing, they wouldn't use it. One Major League team took our insoles. We sent them 80 pair. They tested 200 professional athletes over an 8-month period. I think the study cost them 100 grand. I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And they didn't care whether the non-slip insoles worked or didn't. They couldn't have cared less.
Yeah.
And what they found was that 90% of the athletes in the insoles ran faster and had
Wow.
a longer stride length. I can show you why that is. 80% started and stopped faster, which means you're able to use ground reaction force or maintain the kinetic chain. And 80% were more stable from the knee to the ground. Well, that study, which is on our website, is gold because now you've got this third party validation. I never spoke to the biomechanics lab doing it. I didn't know the people doing the testing. Talk about a blind test. They could have cared less whether our insole worked or it didn't. But those kinds of results has meant that athletes and players are doing it. And, now just in the last 60 days, the NFL, 10 teams have bought. Kansas City hasn't yet, by the way.
Okay.
But 10 professionals, I think everybody in their division has, but 10 professional teams have bought our insole. We created a new insole. So they've bought the non-slip and we created one for turf toe protection. Do you know about turf toe?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this product, normally they just put a stiff plate in the shoe. This insole is soft when you're standing on it, but when you get it to here, it becomes stiff. So
Yep.
you can run full speed without over rotating your big toe because we have this carbon fiber plate in it and it's split here for dexterity.
Wow.
The Buffalo Bills were our first test account. And, they, I sent them 3 or 4 pair, and Nate Bresky, the head trainer up there, calls me a couple weeks later and says, how many of those samples do you have? And I said, I have 25. And he goes, send them all to me. And uh, I think Nate would say, we tested it and we had very good results.
Yeah.
They can't endorse anything and shouldn't. But we've innovated and we've made products uh, that make players better,
Yeah.
and that's that's really the issue. The challenge now is to have a big enough voice with to tell the public that it's available. I mean, these
Absolutely.
are These are insoles, by the way. What does an insole typically do? It cushions the foot. Mike Yastrzemski calls me up one day and he goes, "Stuart, you got a big problem." I go, "Oh no, what have I done?" He goes, "Stuart, I normally go through 3 to 4 pair of insoles per season. I literally tear them up, the ones that come in as cleats." And he said, "I have been wearing the same insole for 2 years." He said, "They
Wow.
never wear out. You've got a big problem. Nobody's going to buy a second pair."
Well, Bobby Witt's trainer is the same as Patrick Mahomes. If if and Patrick, when he tweets, things happen. If he catches this, it could just absolutely go like wildfire.
Well, yeah, you hope you get those breaks. I mean, again, a lot of those guys get paid to tweet,
Yeah.
and I don't know what Patrick's relation is. But whenever I watch a professional football player running around on a turf toe issue where they've got their foot locked in this cast-like system, or if I see a quarterback planting to throw and I see their foot slipping in their shoe, which happens a lot. You see, they got all this tape on the outside of
Uh-huh.
their shoe. Well, why would you do that? I'll show you what happens. I got my sock puppet out, okay?
Yeah.
It's a normal sock. What does the magician say? This is a normal standard sock.
Yes.
But a normal insole has fabric on it.
Yeah.
This is what's in your shoes, right?
Uh-huh.
And a sock is fabric. So fabric slides on fabric because they have the same coefficient of friction. So now imagine somebody like Patrick is planting to throw a football.
Yep.
What happens?
Moves around.
Now, when you move a quarter of an inch here, how much does your arm move and where's the angle of the exit velocity of your football? Or if you're cutting and you slide over, right? So I'm going to hit this hard
Yeah.
and I slide, right?
Uh-huh.
Now I go over here to the Blumaka non-slip insole.
Yeah.
I'm not faking this. And so now when he plants to throw a football, so you get all this tape. I
Yep.
mean, that's like putting your seatbelts on the outside of a car.
Uh-huh.
Why not use your body weight to lock you in place?
Yep.
And stability is your friend. What sport do you want to slide around in? If sliding helped football players perform better, you would never have cleats on shoes.
Right. Sure.
So yeah, and we don't know all of the athletes that are wearing our product. We get orders from football teams. One of the NFL teams just ordered 170 pair. We had to FedEx 68 pair to camp. So we don't know who's wearing it and who isn't precisely unless they order on our website. But almost every day when I get up and look at the orders, I see a professional athlete has bought product.
Wow. That's amazing. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've accomplished and done in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Well, uh, I, I've had some successes in life and some failures in products. I think what I'm most known for was identifying Hoka when it had only sold 800 pair of shoes and really shepherding that product to market through the acquisition of. I was working for Deckers Corporation. They owned the UGG brand, and we acquired Hoka, and the team I was on did all the early development of the product with the founders, Jean-Luc and Nico. So that's kind of a highlight experience because everybody thought oversized footwear was crazy and none of the big brands thought it was good. But I would say I think the thing that I'm most proud of is what we're doing now because we're solving a big problem while making world-class products. Now, we haven't had the financial success yet. We are not a household name yet. So, Blue Maka would be a lot more fun if we were, $100 million brand instead of scrambling our way to $5 million,
Yeah.
and um, where we could really get, profitability and be able to tell our story and become a household name. Because until the consumers start buying products made the way we make them, we can't really solve that problem,
Yeah.
right? We can't. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me that there's enough of this trash to make 5 billion insoles a year
Yeah.
that are better quality, that will last 1,000 miles, that'll help you perform better. And sometimes it gets discouraging because you think, well, why isn't this resonating? Why don't more people care? Our insoles aren't any more expensive than any other premium insole.
Yeah.
We're just better. We just last 1,000 miles. So I think this project is the most meaningful because it it's a complex business puzzle, but but we're trying to do good business while doing good.
So if anybody wants to get a pair, they want to reach out, any of the products, anything that you're doing, where do they go?
You go to blumaka.com, blumaka.com, or we have a sandal and recovery slide line called Flex Footwear, FLEKS footwear.com. You can go to our partners like Allbirds now. This came out today. If you're looking for a pickleball shoe, we make an insole for DAPS pickleball. Um, we're doing a trail shoe in conjunction with Rabbit Running, the High Country, which is a fantastic shoe. So, you know, you we would appreciate any support, because we're making great products, but we need the consumers to know. By the way, Blumaka means blue earth.
Okay.
The Native American word for earth in Nebraska is maka. So blue for blue sky, and maka for earth, blue earth. And in Hawaiian, maka means beloved one. So it's blue beloved one. So that's the meaning of our name.
Absolutely. I love it. What a wonderful story. I'm going to shout it from the mountaintop. Stuart, what an absolutely illuminating conversation. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for your time and story, man. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to be here, and you're most welcome.
Thank you.